Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to join us. Hopefully many will play this back that can't make the time to join today. But today's webinar is from Sci-Fi to ROI, turning generative AI into real business value. So lucky to have with me again today, Brett Fetchum. How are you doing today, Brett? Oh, you're muted, buddy. Let's get some audio there.
Hey,
There.
thanks so much, Fred, for having me. Glad to be here.
Perfect. I'm glad. So this is our third webinar around AI and your second time here. So I think the first time we started this off was the first one, and we kind of did more of an overview a little bit around AI. So I know today I'm very excited about it. We're going to go deeper. You got some examples for us, and we're going to talk through those, correct?
We're going to get into some real use cases and how customers are actually getting value from AI. So hopefully it'll be fun learning for everyone.
Perfect, Brett. Well, thank you very much. So I'm Fred Reynolds, president of Modern Apps here at XenTegra, and Brett is a CEO and founder of Stellar AI. We partner together to help work with our clients to bring them success through their AI venture. So, Brett, if you can just give me a minute, I want to kind of go through my normal commercial around who XenTegra is for those that are attending that are not aware of XenTegra. Um, so XenTegra was founded by Andy Whiteside. He's the founder and CEO, and he started as XenTegra for the need of real customer enablement and partnership. And I say real partnership is exactly what we're doing here. We're trying to connect our clients and our vendors and our technologies and everything together and truly partner to try to make them successful and make you successful. We are a global company. We're in Canada, India, and in the United States, several places across the United States and focused areas in India and Canada. And for my benefit and my practice, it allows me to do a lot of offshore, nearshore, and onshore resourcing to help our customers fit and right size their projects. Our mission here at XenTegra is to engage, listen, and deliver to the appropriate enterprise technologies of clients of all sizes. And all sizes is very important. Here at XenTegra, we work with large enterprise customers and the smallest of customers as well as clients. Everybody matters. Everybody's trying to get into AI, Brett. So this is great. I think it applies to everyone. So I don't know a CEO out there or owner of a company that hasn't, it's not on their to-do list to understand how AI is going to affect them one way or the other. What Andy created here is a value-added reselling, but a 2.0 version of that. It's really important to understand that we're not a VAR, a traditional VAR that's out there trying to just be a transactor, an order taker. We want to break the mold of that and truly make you successful. We want to strive to be a real partner for you, one that brings you value and not just sitting there taking an order or do a transaction. How we do that is a lot of the things that we get from doing these interactions, these transactions, or the proceeds that come from that, we build right back into our community. We host a lot of activities, in-person events, virtual events, this being one of those. Thank you, Brett, for taking time to do this with me. But we want to come and bring knowledge to our clients. We want to make sure everybody's educated around what's out there, how they can use that. And again, we do a lot of in-person events as well, a variety of things, baseball to go-karting to soccer. I mean, you just name it. If it's out there, next week I'm going down to a yacht, sitting on the back of that, and then having a social hour down there. So it's just really fun, exciting things. Gets people out of the office and get a chance to mingle, connect, and again, kind of connect our vendors and our clients together. We are a one-stop shop for, I would say we do everything from consulting to hosted managed services. We resell, we provide implementation services, nearshore, offshore. So we really can be that single VAR for one of our clients that are looking for a variety of things. We have a lot of things that we do across XenTegra, and therefore we've broken into practice leads. Managed services is led by Trevor Mansell. So he does all of our hosting, runs our managed services. Mark Vincent concentrates on our smaller customers, our SMB, out of XenTegra One. Bill Sutton, longtime member here at XenTegra, works on our more virtual desktop and modern workspace areas. Modern data center and infrastructure ran by Philip Sellers. And then our network and security practices ran by Aaron Benner. So we have many practices to fit the needs of our clients. And then I run modern apps, and you kind of say, what's in modern apps? A lot of things is really what's based and born out of the cloud. So ServiceNow is a high focus of mine. I have a really large ServiceNow team that does implementation, consulting, and resell everything through and through. AI obviously falls within modern apps, Salesforce, and many other technologies. So together, all of us leaders here at XenTegra bring the whole package to our clients to help fit all their use cases. Again, like I said, we do offer a wide variety of managed services, and this is what we do across all practices. No matter what practice it's in, we provide managed services, consulting, implementations. Again, we can do this all through 24/7 support through our NOC. And we feel like that's what this XenTegra difference is. So with that, I think we should get into the meat and potatoes of today's webinar. And Brett, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to you, and cannot wait to dive into and hear more about some of the use cases you have for us to talk about today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. How is that screen showing properly
Yes,
there? I
sir. You're
took
ready to
over.
go. And by
I
the way,
took
before
over.
let me try one more thing. So we have a lot of participants in this webinar. I will tell you, take a look at the chat. Raise your hand. We do want this to be interactive. Brett, I don't know if you want questions during or you want to wait to the end. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat and the hands. So Brett, you let me know. Do you want to hold questions to the end, or do you want them to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think feel free to bring them into the conversation as you deem appropriate, Fred, and otherwise we'll catch up at the end on anything that's lingering there. But no problem. Let's make it interactive, and I'll try to take a breath every now and then, so there's some room to ask questions.
That's
All right.
perfect.
Hey, I'll jump in. So agenda is really simple. Our intent was to focus on some real use cases. And I limited that to just 3 use cases that I brought here to share. So, I look forward to kind of walking through those. I tried to pick some diverse use cases that hopefully, will sort of meet some area of need across everyone that's attending. One of the things I find a lot of times is you can see a use case, let's just say it's a manufacturing use case, but you may have some adjacency that it sort of clues you to kind of think about in your own business. So I actually think it's nice to see a diverse set of use cases, which is what you'll get here. And then we'll talk about generally how to get started. If you scan that QR code, you'll kind of go to our website, which is actually getstellar.ai. The get is key there because there's actually other stellars out there and it confuses people, but you'll get to Get Stellar AI, and feel free to look after this a little bit on what's possible and what's available out there. Let's start with a quick clip to get going here and see if you can hear this. You guys getting the audio on that?
Not getting the audio, Brett. No, sir.
Oh, that's okay. Let's try again. I think it's because it's in my ear. So let's go back
again.
a second. Let's try this.
I read you.
Yes.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. What's the problem? I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do. What are you talking about, Hal? This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it. I don't know what you're talking about, Hal. I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen. Where the hell did you get that idea, Hal? Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move.
Hey, I'll end it there. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're good. You're good, Brett.
Okay. Hey, it's kind of fun to start with that, and it's fun to interact on a little bit, which may be hard in the webinar. But do folks know the name of that movie? Just curious. If you do, feel free to pop it in the chat. And 2, any idea what year that movie was made? And take a minute to pop that in the chat. But I will I'll answer the question while
Brett, I'd love to see at least somebody guess at what year. Somebody put in there.
Yeah, and they're close, right? So the movie is 2001
Got
Space
that.
Odyssey.
Yep.
Right. And
They've
good
got it.
guess on the year. 1968 is actually the year. And
Sure.
it's and when I say this name, people might recognize this, but a pretty famous director, Stanley Kubrick, made that movie. So pretty amazing. But that movie's 1968. And what's fun, Fred and I were talking about this before the webinar. What's fun about it is it actually incorporates the notion of vision AI into it. I could read your lips moving, right? Which is one of the real hot areas in AI right now. So it's pretty amazing, and certainly just the reasoning and thinking that model's doing. It's also, by the way, stories like that sort of stoke elements of fear out there in the community, I think, from really adopting AI. And part of what I'd like to do by sharing some use cases is, help everyone kind of recognize it's not all scary stuff, right? It's stuff that actually can be really helpful, really enabling to businesses, and kind of get past that. I always start these presentations by talking about the hype, right? That prior slide with all the noise. But then here's the thing, it's not just noise, right? Look at these growth numbers here. AI in healthcare growing 17x in the course of this decade, right? So in the next 5 years, AI in healthcare growing 17 times. You're looking at 30-45% growth rates annually in financial services and manufacturing. So, beyond the hype, beyond some of the fear and things that are out there, people are investing in this, it's growing. And, the way I like to kind of state this is it is happening, right? Like this is happening. And it's kind of interesting, Fred. I even go back to the first webinar we did, and this was what, let's call it 6 months ago, maybe something
Yeah.
like that, the first one. And even then, I think I would characterize where people were in the journey is either not doing anything or dabbling a little bit, right? And we're definitely moving in, beyond dabbling into real use cases, and we'll share a bunch of those or a few of those right now. But also the other the space that I'm finding customers in is where they've either been dabbling or actually embarked on some projects, but have kind of gotten stuck, right? Like actually not quite achieving what they intended to do. And this is back to just the notion of ROI and contribution to the business. And so I think where we can help is how do you get started, number one, actually implementing real solutions. But also if you happen to be stuck in some endeavors and you need some expertise. And just to describe this about us really quickly, we've got about 35 customers. We've built over 100 AI solutions in the last couple of years. I would say that they're all kind of meaningful. You'll see three of those right now, but definitely I think can help you grow, expand, and also unstick if you happen to be in that situation.
Yeah,
Fred,
Brett, before you move off the hype, I do have to ask you this. I mean, what I see is there has been a lot of hype around it. It's been like that for a year, 2 years. Me coming from the ServiceNow side and always going to the conferences, I mean, that has been the hype for 2 years at the knowledge conferences. But since we did our last webinar, which was really cool, very enlightening, I think, for a lot of those that participated. I mean, you've had a couple of dozen meetings with our clients and your own, right, during that time. I mean, that hype really seems real. And I was going to ask you, from those meetings you have with those clients, they're obviously getting interested. I mean, you're seeing what's the reality for them using this in their business? I mean, what are you seeing, like the percentage of the reality they can use it?
yeah, I mean, this is back to good question, Fred. It's back to it is happening, right? People are embedding this. They're getting started. At the end of the deck here, we'll talk a little bit about, kind of getting started and not having to, take a big bite out of things, but being able to get a focused project, identify it, and execute. But execution is super high, by the way, and it's super high from very small businesses
Yeah.
to the largest enterprises, right? I just met with one very, very big kind of Fortune 50 company, and this just blew my mind. I met with the CTO there, and he said we have 150 AI projects going on in the company. Now, this is a huge
Amazing.
company. We have 150 projects, and he said we have 17 major initiatives. So those projects kind of fit under 17 big bucket initiatives. So, it is happening, right? And by the way, I hate the fear kind of component, right? And I also hate this notion of sort of fear selling. So I don't want to come across like that but I do think I would encourage everyone to be participating, right? Participate now. Because I think if you sit on the sidelines, so much is going to happen. What I like about participating is you develop a culture of acceptance of AI. You teach your employees how to partner with AI, not be intimidated by AI. And I always use this notion that you build a belief system inside the organization to embrace AI. And I think if you've accomplished those cultural elements in addition to the actual practical elements of the project, I just think a year from now, 2 years from now, you'll be way ahead of the game because you'll have that culture sort of evolving. So
100%.
good question. I wanted to lead because an element of what we talk about here will be around AI agents, and this is another thing. Like if we were in a room together, it'd really be good to talk about this as a team and hear different comments about this. But the notion of agents is really interesting, right? And it's almost like, I mean, I'm going to oversimplify this when I describe it, but it's like a worker. It's like an AI worker that I get in my organization that's an agent that's actually executing tasks and doing things, right? Everybody's gotten quite familiar with, let's use the notion of a chat GPT where you ask a question, you get an answer. But an agent actually does something with the answer, right? So that the agent actually absorbs some new information and then may go and say, oh, I need to go tell the customer this based on what I just learned. Or I may need to go update this system of record based on what I just learned, right? So this notion of agents that are active, that are doing work, which by the way, will be a couple of the use cases that I'll share with you. But we turn that kind of that information enablement, this middle bullet here, into decision capable software, right? So now you're not just getting the insight that we're kind of accustomed to getting from Chat GPT, but we're actually able to make a decision on that. And not only can we make a decision, but the AI can actually make a decision and go do something. Now, I'll actually use this moment just to emphasize this. I never advocate for turning over our businesses to AI, right, to run. And what AI can do is triage work. They can take care of a lot of mundane tasks, but it definitely needs human oversight and engagement. So, our roles as employees in all of this is just incredibly valuable. And this is why, by the way, I think getting it culturally embedded in our organizations is super helpful, because those that are embrace this, learn to use it, have a belief system in it, will be able to take advantage of it, make their companies better, and be sort of fully capable and higher value employees. So just leave that thought with you, right? All right, let me go to the next thing here. Oh, I gotta click here. Here's how. All right, 3 use cases. Here's a quick one. This one I call it sneeze no more. By the way, scan that barcode there if you have a chance, and later you can read actually an article from our customer about this. So again, if we were interactive in a room, this is a little easier, but I don't know how many people out there have allergies. Just, you can kind of wave or whatever. By the way, I got my Kleenex here, so I definitely qualify. If you think of the historical allergy process, you go to the doctor. If anybody's been through this testing process, you get pricked. It's commonly done on your back. It can be done on your arm, but they do a lot of little pricks, and then they put different substances right on those, and that's how they test you. They see what you react to. How does your skin react to that? And ultimately, based on what you're allergic to, they actually mix a custom prescription for you, which is administered as a shot, by the way. And the way the shot that process is, you have to go to the doctor, you have to get the shot. After you get the shot, you have to stay in the office for a half an hour to be sure you don't have a negative reaction to the shot. Then you go home, right? Fairly complicated process. And you have to do that first on a weekly basis, then it expands to a monthly basis for 5 years. Okay, that is the current process. I went through it, by the way, so I can speak to it very intimately. What this company does, and this is a kind of a messy description, so really I think my voiceover of what I'm saying is probably more relevant than the visualization a second. But what this company does is provide that whole process I just talked about there remotely. You can do it from home. And here's how it works. They ship, you go online, you engage with them, you say, hey, this is great, right? I never have time to go to the doctor. I certainly can't go once a week or once a month, right? So you engage and you have an interaction online with the company. They ship you a test kit remotely. Now, the test kit is not all of these pricks in the back. It's a blood sample. You prick your finger, you put a dab of blood in the thing, and you return it, you send it back. They analyze that blood sample and they diagnose what you're allergic to, if you're allergic to anything, and what is the combination of sort of medications, allergens that they need to introduce to you, okay? So you get the results from this back. You actually do meet online with a doctor to talk about it, get comfortable, explain everything to you. And then you embark on a process where now you're no longer getting shots, but they ship you the term is sublingual drops. So there are these drops like an eyedropper, and you put them under your tongue. So no more shots. You can administer it yourself, and you get daily drops. And what's also kind of interesting, because when I first got exposed to this, knowing when I had done this process and there was so much fear about your reaction to these shots, I was like, how can you do that? Like, what if somebody has a reaction at home? The difference is when you're getting a shot once a month, you're getting a pretty hard, big dose of this medicine, and you can react to that. But because it's daily sublingual drops, it's very small, kind of micro exposure. So your risk of any allergic reaction is effectively zero. So if you think about the process of this company, it's automation of testing, shipping you a custom mixed prescription formula, and then you apply these drops. And then of course it is a 5-year process, by the way. So you're continuing to get these shipments and you're continuing to have, kind of customer interaction. So this is kind of a view of that process. I'm in a nutshell, what this company, early stage startup, very manually intensive, a lot of swivel chairing between applications. So for example, there's human interaction with the customer, there's entering a customer name and identification, right, of that customer, there's a process of ordering the test kit shipment, right? Test shipment, the kit gets shipped, it gets returned, it gets tested. All embedded in that is multiple systems and what I would call swivel chairing, right? From, okay, now I've gone from my ordering system to my prescription dispensing system to my proprietary HIPAA compliant customer communication system, back to my fulfillment system in the back office, back to my customer engagement system, all of these interactions. And one of the things I should probably do when I describe this use case, I need to go back and talk to my team how many systems they're talking to, but I want to say you're talking about 10 or 12 different systems, right? And things that were happening. So it was extremely manually intensive, tons of swivel chairing. The solution that here's kind of portraying, right, all of the challenges, right, of all of that swivel chairing, multiple tasks. Here's what happened for this business. We basically deployed a bunch of AI agents. One AI agent communicates with the customer. One AI agent, communicates with the kit shipment company, right, and coordinates that element of shipping. One AI agent coordinates with the fulfillment team that's actually, putting together the medication list, ultimately distributing that. So all of these integration points, but get what this company has done. By the way, when we started with them, they were in 6 states. Today, at least as of the last time that I have interacted with this customer, and I'm due to do some follow-up with them, but they were in 21 states. Okay. So they went from 6 states to 21 states. You know how many people they added in the back office there? Goose egg,
It's great.
zero. They did not. So they've scaled, from 6 states to 21 states with the corresponding number of customers, transactions, all of that kind of work without hiring into the back office, right, for that work. So,
I got a
again,
couple questions for you, Brett. So, I mean, look, I see the workflow, like the slide before that. Like, I mean, to me, I was first thinking, okay, this is a lot of automation. You can go back to the results, that's fine. But I was thinking this is a lot of automation and trying to bring into the agent. So, I'm interested in the fact that when you kind of put this type that says concurrent task of being run at machine speed, that makes me start going, okay, there's your real ROI because you got multiple tasks, and that's how they can scale and not add people because now they're doing it at machine speed. Um,
that's right.
but you have, and you talk about the multiple agents, which I think that's a myth that when I talk to some of my friends about AI, they think it's just one thing. It's just AI that's doing this. But you kind of said it really good there. You have an agent that does this, an agent that does that. So specific things. Can In this use case, I'm curious about it because you're dealing with people. You said you had an agent that deals with the humans. So how much
Mhm.
did that benefit the customer side of that? Because that's one thing I fear with introducing people do is like you start losing that customer human touch. But again, if I'm getting things faster and getting what I need, I like that. So what's the
Well,
human
by
agent?
the way, I love that question. That's a great one, Fred. The first thing I thought of when you asked this, when I met the founders of this company, right, and it's actually two brothers. They're wonderful people, just doing amazing work here. They, their problem was, and this is the example they told me. They said it's Saturday. I'm at my daughter's soccer game, and my phone is ringing, right, for attention, right? And by the way, they had data. This company is very data driven. They had data that responsiveness was critical, right? So, for example, if someone goes and explores on their website and then says, "Okay, I want to sign up. I want to do this," their ability to respond to them at that moment and engage them was very, very critical, right? Hence, they actually had it forward to their phone. So I'm at the soccer game to see my daughter, and now I've got to interact, with that customer.
Yeah.
And so now you've got an agent, and it's exactly what you were describing, Fred. And by the way, the agent in this particular use case is not a voice agent, but it's an interactive agent
Okay.
online. And it can be either, by the way. We could, you can do it. It can be voice interaction. But now they're getting that real-time responsiveness interaction. My customer doesn't have to divert from his daughter's soccer game, right? And the customer's actually happier because they're getting clarity and answers,
I no
right?
way.
And
Yeah, love
and
it.
let me tell you the important thing about the concurrent tasks and machine speed. And I'm glad you brought out that bullet. What's so interesting is where the agent space is evolving is into multi-agent processes, right? And what's kind of interesting is in these processes, and you guys are probably reading a lot, seeing the evolution of this, but agents are actually now they have memory, right? So, and in fact, you see it even when you use a chat GPT, right? If you continue to use chat GPT, it's going to know you, Fred. It's going to know you work for XenTegra. It's going to know what XenTegra does. It's going to know your history of other questions. And when you ask it a question, it's going to use that context to actually answer your question and take action. In the same kind of way, now these agents are going to understand the context of you, as a customer, what you're asking, what you're doing. Then, by the way, they're going to be able to apply that context in terms of what do I need to instruct the shipping department to do differently, or what do I need to instruct the shipping agent to do, right? So this notion of contextually understanding, your piece of work, and then being able to bring that context to another agent or to one of the employees inside the company. It's pretty amazing, right?
Really is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's that use case. Let me give you another one. Let me
Hey,
just do.
Brett, I know
Yeah.
we got two more use cases. There's one question there I might want you to poke at real quick. So if you look in the chat real quick, there was certainly a comment from Joe around him attending
Will you ask it? Because I'm having trouble seeing the
he
chat.
said, are you guys building MCP or using third parties and creating workflows with N8N?
Yeah, we're using MCP protocols typically. Great question. And man, that space is, by the way, that's a very sophisticated question, whoever's asking that. So, it's rapidly evolving tech. But yes, we're typically using MCP protocols. And I have to say, what I should probably do in the future on one of these calls is have one of my engineers here, Fred, that could actually go into a bit more detail. But that is the protocol that we're typically kind of scaling
We
around.
seem to find our next webinar based on the current webinar we're on, because last time we were there, somebody said they want to see use cases, and here we are. So the next webinar can be a little bit deeper technically.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. And for everyone else here, that's called model context protocol. And the way that I simplify it, and it's probably a gross simplification, but it's kind of the APIs between applications and agents and how they interact. And it's this contextual protocol of how the model and the agent learn, retain information, and then share that information with others. So super great question, by the way. All right, let me tell you this use case. This is one of my favorites. So I'll kind of cut to the chase. This is a multi-billion-dollar medical device company. Okay, they operate in over 100 countries around the globe. By the way, we've built about a dozen different use cases for this customer. This is one of those use cases. Okay, here's the situation. When one of the devices, the medical devices this company makes are blood dialysis machines, related blood transfusion machines, really complex pieces of technical equipment that are in hospitals. They're in research labs. They're in blood centers. Okay, all over the world. You can imagine in 100 countries around the world. When one of these machines breaks, they call into a call center in Denver, Colorado. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with these processes, but the historical way this works is there is there's a translation service, right, that helps with the language challenges. It's a pretty complicated process. And if you think about this customer, on one end, you've got a technician that's used to administering a dialysis procedure, right? That they're not experts in troubleshooting that machine, right? They know how to execute and work the machine. At the same time, you've got kind of a tier one customer service slash tech support rep in Denver, Colorado. You're translating, this multi-language kind of challenge, right, across those dimensions. You've got to, you don't have the product manager or engineer that designed the product, right? So you can imagine those conversations are cumbersome, right, to actually solve the problem and get it resolved. In that process, by the way, the customer service rep takes a lot of notes. They accumulate what I'm going to call structured data, right? So they're going to check the box. This is the problem type. This is the customer that called me. This is the location of their facility, right? All of that stuff. But they're also going to capture a lot of rich text of, hey, what's the customer telling me what's going on? Ultimately, they're going to troubleshoot that problem. Ultimately, hopefully get the customer back in operation. Now, second complicating part of the process, because it's a medical device, they have to report to a regulatory reporting agency. It's called the IMDRF, and the MD of that is medical devices, and it's a subset of the FDA, basically. And this company, now get this, this is amazing. They were 100,000 incidences behind in reporting to this regulatory agency. Okay. So they've got compliance risk. There's a lot embedded in that problem. The use case that they asked us to help them with is their plan was to hire 6 to 8 people. They projected it was going to take months to even a year, but let's just, I'll keep it, not to overstate the use case, I'll keep it to months right now, right, of work for 6 or 8 people. What they needed to do is go look at the history on all of these nodes, classify the data in the reporting format for the regulatory agency, and then create the output to them to distribute this. And again, they speculated 6 to 8 people, 6 months to a year, right, to do this work. Long and short of it is we built an AI agent, okay? And I use this notion when I talk about it of this intersection, because this intersection is so valuable, right? And here's what the intersection is, and here's what the new technology has really unlocked for customers, okay? Is number one, you can take all of that structured data, everything, every box they check, who the customer is, where they're located, what their name is, what type of problem did I originally classify this problem as, all of that structured data. Now, what generative AI has unlocked is the ability to use rich text, audio, and video, right? So in the past, and anybody that's worked in customer service is going to know this problem, right? You take all of this rich text, all of these important notes, nobody ever looks at it again. Nobody ever uses it, right?
Yeah.
It's just kind of out there. And so now we have an AI that ingests the structured data. It ingests the unstructured data, which is calls and text, right? All of that unstructured data, absorbs it, interprets it, understands it, right? Then, by the way, then we inject machine data off the devices themselves. So now you're integrating another structured data set. You're ingesting, and let's just call it the month history prior to this device failing, right? So you can see what the logs were on that machine, what kind of issues were going on with that machine. You bash that, and that's why the intersection drawing here, right? You bash all that together. The AI assesses all of that, then categorizes and classifies this data per the requirements of the regulatory reporting agency and produces fundamentally the output and answers for the regulators. Guess how long it takes?
Mm.
An
I'm scared.
afternoon. An afternoon, right? I mean, it obviously you got to build and develop the application, but all of that instead of 6 or 8 months worth of work, right? It basically happens fairly instantaneously. That output is produced. So I'm going to pause there for a second, Fred. And does that stimulate any thoughts, questions, or anything from you or the audience here?
Yeah, I'd love to hear some more from the audience too. But no, I mean, that's one, I think it's not humanly possible for us to digest all of that, right? So I think that is where this is really important. I think this is where people get nervous about. You start putting take that machine learning AI and combine all that. I mean, anybody who's used ChatGPT sees how powerful it is. You ask it a quick question, it can be a complex question. Within seconds, it comes back with answers, pulling from everywhere. In this case, it's a business. And again, they were going to hire 6 to 8 people. Then you ask yourself, okay, what are those 6 or 8 people going to do that are going to get hired? But I mean, I almost say I could probably answer this question too, Brett. I would leave it for you because you know their use case. They were going to hire people to do this work. But now this work's being done so quickly, but they're still probably behind and not catching up on the compliance stuff. So, did they hire those 6 or 8 people to handle something different or use this data?
Great question. And here's the short answer, right? So now, by the way, to your point, and it's consistent, Fred, with the observation you made from the other side around, machine speed, and sort of ability to do stuff. So now you've ingested this sort of much more rich and robust set of data. You've analyzed it, you've made decisions, you've classified data. You generally have a better understanding of the problem type and what's going on. So now you take those 6 or 8 people and you say, okay, one, I have a manufacturing problem and it happens to be concentrated in this particular plant in Uruguay or wherever, right? And so now like let's go find out what the heck is going on down there. What do we need to fix? Do they have a process problem? You know, what's the issue there? So that's one example. The other example is they've got a component part problem, right? That's continuing to fail. So and by the way, they've got, you know, I'm making this up, but 10 distributors of that component part problem. So they need to figure out which manufacturer that component it is, and then how do they start collaborating with them to fix the problem. And then, of course, the bigger common issue is it's a user training issue in the field with the technician that's using it. So now I can deploy, basically enhance my training materials, reach out, you know, in areas of the world where they need more attention, training, and capability to use it. So, you know, if you just think about that notion of, and by the way, who wants to sit there and classify data for 6 months, right? You know,
Yeah, nobody.
um, so a pretty amazing, right, kind of transformation for that business and opportunity to reduce errors in the field. And I didn't mention the multilingual part, Fred, but what's so nice is when you're interacting with the AI, it's able to ingest all of this, interpret it in any language that you choose, right? So if you've got to push training out to a particular part of the world in a particular language, right, now you've got all of that knowledge ingested and able to leverage it in its natural language, you know, sort of capability. So amazing use case. All right, last one. I had to put a vision AI one in here, okay, because this is so rapidly evolving. You know, and it's interesting. Obviously, there's been a lot of visual automation that's been enabled over the last 20, 25 years. But the notion of integrating AI with it is pretty amazing and what's possible. And I have to say, this is very evolving right now. So this is a customer. They build. I'm going to simplify this and call it electrical boxes. But these boxes, by the way, they're 3 feet wide by 8 feet tall, and they power typically big multi-tenant office buildings, multi-tenant residential facilities, and the big use case is data centers, right? So,
Okay.
for example, in the basement of a big data center campus, they'll have hundreds of these boxes lined up on the wall. Everybody knows sort of the power consumption of data centers, right? And these boxes, you know, it's funny when we started collaborating with this customer, I sort of assumed like all these boxes are standard gear, right? You know, you buy a XV101 and, you know, you ship it, right? What I discovered is about 20% of the boxes they manufacture are actually custom. And they're custom for either power constraints within the building. So the customer may buy 80 of, you know, standard boxes, 20 kind of custom boxes, whatever the mix and match of that is. But most of the end customers require some element of customization. This company had a design team that is basically designing parts and components, assembling these sort of unique boxes, right, that are part of their overall solution. This company had, and Fred, you'll appreciate seeing PTC Creo
Yeah,
on there, right?
yeah,
Because that's another joint customer of ours, by the way.
yeah.
Fred and I work with them, and this is kind of unrelated to them, although it happens to be a Creo drawing, and it's who this particular customer uses. They had 10,000 legacy drawings, okay, that they effectively, I'm going to use the notion, weren't leveraging. Okay. And so what we were able to, and so what happens is their designers are constantly designing new parts, new components, new boxes, just this ongoing, you know, cycle. And by the way, this company is growing fabulously. I mean, you can imagine with growth in data centers and power, right?
Oh,
This company's just doing terrific. And and they're struggling to keep up, right? They're kind of always behind in this design and this custom kind of build component of their shop. Long and short of it is we ingest all these historical drawings. The AI learns, understands them, categorizes them and this is a particular need for this customer, in a structured data format, which is what you see on this drawing too. And then we actually give the part a smart part number, a numbering sequence, an ability for design engineers to retrieve, to number one, to identify those parts, retrieve them, and then reuse them. And that could be, by the way, hey, I don't have a part exactly that size, but I got something similar. So I want to leverage that drawing and do a quick refurb of it versus drawing a whole new part, right? So
Yeah.
we basically leverage Vision AI, look at 10,000 drawings, categorize those, inventory them, name them, and give them a smart numbering sequence. And now the design engineers can actually find and identify them. So that's just a quick summary of the use case. There's so many of these, and I mentioned earlier the notion of whether it's your industry or another. Oftentimes you can sort of draw parallels and adjacencies. But just to mention a couple other kind of vision AI use cases really quickly. One of them is we have a gasket manufacturer, right? And so we're able to absorb photographs of basically the output of the manufacturing line on gaskets and then basically detect errors with AI, right? And then identify those errors and so on. This is kind of interesting. I was talking to a customer. I just want to make the point of parallels and adjacencies. I was talking to another customer about this, and and long and short of it is they're basically in clinical research, basically medical R&D, and they're analyzing molecules, right? And they said, well, if you can look at a gasket, then can you look at like a slide of a molecule, and I need to kind of count and characterize different color schemes and other things, right, in this drawing. And I'm like, yeah, I think, we can do that. Ultimately, we deployed an interesting solution for them. So it's just kind of interesting. You can take sort of adjacencies of these concepts and think about how do you apply them to your business. The other quick AI use case in Vision we've done that I love is instead of manual job inspection of construction sites, we're actually using AI where the subcontractor's taking pictures, submitting those. The general contractors no longer going out there and inspecting. We're able to look at, plumbing, electrical, and studs and just, fundamental builds inside there. And what we actually do is classify risk on it. So we say, this sort of photo, is I'm making this up, but is a 93% probability that it's successful and everything looks good. This one's 35%. So hey, you probably need them to go, and we can identify what they need to go check and do. So just
Tell you something very eerie right there, Brett. I'm sitting here listening to that, thinking about visionary stuff, and that use case you just said was in my mind because I actually have my GC license, so I've built many things, and we're building a new building in our church and stuff. I'm thinking if he can do that with those CAD drawings and that complexity, surely you can take a picture of something you're building and compare it to the schematics and the approved drawings and get an outcome. So I was thinking I was going to keep my mouth shut because I was going to go and say maybe I can just go do something with that and make a lot of money, but it's just so funny how you pop that out. I'm like, okay, well, never mind. It's out.
right. Yeah. So again, I mean, these are all hopefully for the audience here, just practical use cases and things that are just very enabling to customers and businesses. And the reality is if you're not kind of experimenting and advancing some in these areas, your competitors will be. And again, I don't like the notion of kind of scaring people into taking action because it needs to be because you feel it and you want to make a difference. But it is the old thing that you're hearing commonly talked about, which is the folks that are leveraging these tools are going to have advantages over people that aren't, right? And so
Brett, let me tell you this. So great use cases, right? It was really good to have this conversation. But I want to say that, in all three of those, it probably all started from just a simple conversation. I mean, I have conversations, you have conversations, you have a lot more conversations probably on AI than I do, but I have conversations with people just talking about their process. Not everything's AI, and some is automation, sometimes it's RPA, sometimes it's this. The good news is you've got the background, the history of doing this for so many years, you can identify that like we try to do. We're not out there trying to sell AI to everybody. You can quickly identify, you know what, that's automation, and we can do that using what you already have. Or maybe it is AI and you can do that with what you have. I think the
Right.
point of this is everybody needs to start with some small use case, invest a tiny bit just to get started, just to get the brain thinking. Because I'm sure when they first looked at those drawings they had and all that thing, they probably were mind blown thinking, oh yeah, we can use AI to suck all that data in and there's your output of doing all that work for you. Because I probably wouldn't have thought we're that advanced yet, even though I should know that.
Yeah.
I think it's
Well,
getting started.
the other thing to that, and we're going to talk a little bit about getting started, but what I would add to that, Fred, is once you pick that use case and that first use case and you start, you execute, what then happens is you've embedded an AI brain into your company at that point, right? You've got an AI agent support person capability embedded in your company. Now adding the next use case is much simpler, right?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
now you've got that sort of capability, and so you just can keep kind of growing. And one thing that I'll use the opportunity that you said that, Fred, to say here is I saw this data recently. Here's the quick factoid. The average product manager at a large company uses 9 applications just for product management. Okay. Never mind their HR applications, their Microsoft Office applications, their, ERP applications, whatever all the other applications you're using. But just for product management, they typically have about 9 applications. And one of the things, and I think this is an evolution, it doesn't happen like with the snap of a finger, but over time, basically what companies are going to have is a data layer and then they're going to have an AI layer. And instead of having all of these point solutions, like the product manager's got 9 applications, you can imagine if you're Procter and Gamble, if the product manager's got 9 applications and the HR person's got 9 applications and they're different and so on, think about how many applications that IT organization is managing and sort of navigating, right? And over time, I think as we start building these AI brains in the organization, you start needing less of those SaaS applications, some of those expensive licenses, and you actually start leveraging, that AI brain where you're interacting with your data and you're replicating what was previously possible, right, with these point solutions. So
100%.
yeah. So just real quickly, right? You don't have to eat the whole elephant, right? You can take a small bite. What do we help customers do? One, you want to solve a real problem. You want it to you want to do you don't want to do the heavy, complex operational lift to get started, right? You want to do something light and manageable. But you want something that has strategic impact to your business, right? So we help customers, kind of find those. A lot of times customers already know those, like, hey, here's the area where I think this could help me. Can you help me organize, build something, deploy? And by the way, we do a couple of things. We do it where we kind of do all that end to end. We do it where we hand off to your team afterwards, let your IT team own it. They've learned a lot about, the underlying work of large language models and how to interact with these, and can then take it and build their own kind of models and applications. So, we're very flexible in how we work with you there. And then again, back to what do you focus on? I mean, an easy place to start, like that workflow that I showed with the
Mhm.
allergy company, right? Is where you've got these repetitive swivel chairing kind of administrative tasks, data entry. It's a great place to start. But by the way, you can't leave it alone, right? You've got to constantly be monitoring, refining, training, organizing that information and integrating, your employee into validating results and ensuring, safety and effectiveness. So, but that's it. And hey, I want to encourage everybody of all of the little QR codes I sent you. This is a different one. I encourage you to scan this. This is an unsolicited post from one of our customers that it's a LinkedIn post, and it's what they wrote about working with us. And I'd love you, if you have time, to just take a read of it, because I thought I try to tell customers what we do, and I can't seem to get it right. And then hearing this from a customer's mouth, I thought was just fabulous. So I thought I would share it here.
Thanks, Brett.
Yeah.
Well, also, that was great use cases, great discussion as always. I see we're going about another hour, so it doesn't take long to chew that up. But we got 6 minutes. I definitely want to see if anyone want to raise a hand. I can unmute you if you have any questions, and also encourage you to reach out to your XenTegra, client executive if you want to schedule a meeting or further discussion. You can also contact Brett and I directly. We can facilitate that. If you're not ready to jump right into trying something, prototyping something, we still offer a couple hour workshops, full day workshops, training you around AI or just discussing AI with your employees. So we do a variety of things to help you get ready for it and start speaking to it.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, I'm glancing at the chat, and I'll kind of speak to a couple of those. The first one is is it local or cloud? My answer is both, and either depending on the customer need. But what I will say is most of what we're building, the customers want to host in their environment for the most part, and we help them integrate it into their infrastructure. So let's use the example that you're a Microsoft Stack customer, right? Typically, we would build inside of that Microsoft framework. I don't know if people know this, by the way, but the notion of Microsoft Copilot, right? Everybody associates that with hey, it's going to correct my email, it's going to do these sort of help me with sort of what I'm going to call mundane office tasks. But what's interesting at Microsoft is the umbrella of Copilot. And some of you folks on here probably know about this, but they have something called Copilot Studio, which is a no code, low code environment, right, for building applications inside of Copilot. They also have a more sophisticated dev platform that's called Foundry. This is all underneath the Copilot umbrella. A lot of times what we'll do is leverage that environment so a customer doesn't have to make additional investment. They already got this infrastructure. It's typically it's cloud based, right, versus on-prem hardware, but it's in the customer's environment. We'll build these solutions leveraging technology they have. We happen to be a Microsoft AI and cloud partner. We happen to be a Snowflake Select Services partner, but I always say we're agnostic to your tech stack. For example, if you're an AWS customer, if you are a GCP customer, we build across all of those environments, right? So that's the on-prem versus cloud portion. By the way, a lot of times people will want to start with a hosted solution to kind of test things, and then there's a subsequent deployment into their environment. We sort of collaborate with how you best would like to explore that. And then, I see the question on prompt engineering and some things around that. I mean, what I would say is that is our core competency, right? It's defining those prompts and protocols within inside the AI. It's building the models that are not only leveraging large language models, but what are the supporting, and I'll use these terms that are commonly used, RAG models, other kind of fine-tuned models that are around the LLM. Because by the way, as enterprise businesses, we got to get the answer right all the time, right? We can't have, these sort of what you hear of commonly as hallucinations or errors, right? So we've got to leverage the power of the large language model. But some of and I'm going to use the notion of our expertise around supporting models to be sure we're consistently getting the right answer, right? So
perfect. All right. I don't see any hands raised or additional questions in the chat. So with that, Brett, thank you for your time again. I think we know that our next webinar, maybe in a month or two, we can make it go deeper around technical, and maybe some of these questions you just filled and answered, and maybe how these things are done. How do you go about a project?
right.
Maybe that's really it. How do we approach a project? What technologies do we use? So something like that.
Great. All right. Hey, thanks everyone for having us. Fred, thanks for hosting.
Of course. Thank you, Brett. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.